So there's certain bird korbanos that a woman who goes through childbirth has to bring, and a zav and zavim and zava. So zavim, a zav is a man who has a certain emission, which is unusual, and a woman who has blood not during her period for three consecutive days. So in order for these people to become pure, they have to tahor, they have to bring special korbanos of birds. So they're not allowed to use money that had acquired the sanctity of Shmitta. Because remember, we spoke last time about in a case where you bought or sold Shmitta produce, which obviously was in a very specific case, because most of the time you're not allowed to sell it. So the money has sanctity, so you have to then use that money to buy other produce to eat or food. It actually doesn't have to be produce. If you want to buy a chicken and chef the chicken and eat the chicken, that's okay too. But it can't be a non-kosher animal, and it can't be, as we're talking about, things that are not food, like slaves or real estate. And if you brought these bird korbanos, that you purchased the birds with Shemitah money, you have to again spend the equal amount of money and eat that and treat the food with which you bought that money with kedusha Shviis. Now, one thing that's a little bit interesting here. Okay, never mind. I'm mixing up halachos. Mishnah test. Or shesacha b'shemen shel Shviis. So let's say you had leather that you softened with Shmitta oil. So Mike, when was the last time you had a new baseball glove? It's been a while. Now, when you got the baseball glove, how did you break it in? Some people put it under the mattress, right? And they also have creams and lotions and stuff. So in those days, you had something that was leather, you would rub olive oil into it. So if that olive oil was from Shmitta olives, what do you think happens? Well, the Shmitta, the olives have the sanctity. And we learned that you're only allowed to have the food or have that product, that fruit or vegetable or grain, so long as it's in the field for anyone to take and for the animals to eat. Because remember, last week towards the end, we learned about what if you put oil-infused rose or rose-infused oil. Excuse me, it was rose-infused oil, but the question was if it was Shmitta rose in old oil, or if it was a non-Shmitta rose, but in new oil. That was, in Shmitta oil that was freshly pressed. So last week we said that the old oil doesn't take the taste so strongly of the rose. But new oil, if you put a rose in there, it's going to have the flavor and smell of the rose in there. So if you broke in your baseball glove or any other leather item with Shmitta olive oil, it might be a problem. So Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yudalik, Rabbi Eliezer says you have to burn it. The Chachamim Omrim Yochal Kenegda, but the Chachamim are lenient and they say no, you have to use the value of that oil and buy other food with it and treat that food with sanctity of Shemitah. Yeah, so the problem with this is that your benefit, because you soften the leather or whatever you work the leather with it, you're going to be benefiting from the Shemitah produce. There's two potential problems. The main potential problem is that you did a non-food act with it, probably, because we also learned that you're supposed to eat it and you have to use it for its highest and best use, more or less. And even though we said rubbing olive oil on your skin is a regular use of oil, and that's okay, but to do it into leather is not. So that's one potential problem. The second potential problem is that you're gonna have it in the you're benefiting from the oil because you've softened the leather with it, even after you're not allowed to use the oil anymore, because the benefit of the oil stays forever, right? But you're only allowed to use the oil while it's still in the field. So Rabbi Elazar says, so you have to burn the object. And but the Chachamim are lenient to say, no, you just have to use the value of the oil. You have to spend more money equal to that value of the oil and value of the oil, and buy other food with it and treat that food with Shmitta sanctity. Amar lifnei Rabbi Akiva. They said in front of Rabbi Akiva, Omer Hayi Rabbi Lazar or Shasacha b'Shem Shel Shviis Yidale. That Rabbi Lazar said if you had rubbed oil into of Shmitta into leather, you have to burn it. Amar lahem shtoku lo yomer lechem mash Rabbi Lazar Amar bo. He said, quiet, you shouldn't. I won't tell you what Rabbi Lazar said about it. So Rabbi Akiva was saying that that Rabbi Lazar actually had a leniency, but we paskin like the Chachamim. Yod va'od Amar Lefanav. They also said in front of Rabbi Akiva, Amar Hay Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer, I believe, was one of the Rabbeim of Rabbi Akiva. So this is, he says, if you eat the bread of the kusim. So basically it means so there's two things going on here. So at a certain point, so the kusim were a group of people who lions were attacking them, and then they had a dream that if they convert to Judaism, the lions will stop attacking them. So they converted to Judaism. Some of them may have gone back. I mean, some of them may have converted back in the time of Yoshua ben Nun, but then something happened again in the later time of the Malachim, in the second, I think in the book of Second Kings in Tanakh. But then they found that these people kept their idol on Har Eval. So how genuine was their conversion? For two reasons. One was that they didn't convert out of pure intentions. It was only to receive a benefit of the lions to stop attacking them. And the second thing was how robust was their acceptance of the Torah if they kept their idol. Because what's the second of the 10 Commandments? You not to have any graven images. So how could you become a ger and accept the Torah if you kept your avodah zarah? So they weren't helping, or they stopped working on the second base of Mikdash. So Ezra excommunicated them, and then later on, the Chachamim saying this actually is around what Daf Yomi is about to do. I don't think they got there yet, but Daf Yud Zayin, I think in Yevamos, says that because they found that they kept their idol, the Chachamim said they revoked their Jewish status, which in itself is a very fraught topic nowadays. For the past at least 15 years, it's been a big topic because some people say that rabbi was no good, so the people who converted by that rabbi really aren't good converts. That this is what happened to the Kusim is a possible source about that issue, but it's an issue that's a very difficult issue from a halachic standpoint and from a human aspect. So we're not going to talk about it, but at a certain point, the Chachamim said the Kusim are completely going. We don't have to even suspect that they're Jewish out of stringency. So we weren't allowed to eat their bread. So they said in front of Rabbi Akiva that Rabbi Elazar said that if you eat the bread of these kusim, it's like you're eating treif. It's not real treif, but it's like you eat treif, and you would get rabbinic lashes. Amar lahem shtoku lo yomer lechem mash Rabbi Elazar amar bo. He said, quiet, I'm not going to tell you what Rabbi Elazar really said about it. Because he actually was quite more lenient than the regular opinion. Yud Aleph. If you had a bathhouse, so whether it's talking about that they had a steam room in the bathhouse, or they're talking about what we would consider like a swimming pool, but that was the the warm where the warm water was. So if they use straw or sticks, that was Shmitta, you are allowed to wash in it. It's not considered that you are getting improper benefit. But if he's a very important person, he shouldn't, because people might come to think that it's something that you should do or could do. So the way the Rambam says, if he's a very respected person and people respect him, they might include, the Rambam says they might include things that aren't just wood. They might include some fragrant things to make it smell very good, because the Shviis rooms don't always smell so good. But right, Jeff, you remember from the rooms in the saunas, because of all the sweat that people sweat in there, they don't necessarily smell so great. So maybe they would put some type of things that have a good fragrance in there to improve the smell, out of respect for the respected person. And maybe that's something that would have kedusha shvius, because these are just sticks and straw, which aren't really food, but they might put something that's better fragrant that might be considered a food, or to some extent that would have kedusha shvius. That's how the Rambam explains this halacha. So it seems to be different than the Bartanur explains. Okay, chapter 9, hapega, the hayarbuzin, hashotin. Okay, so according to Professor Felix, hapegam is root. I could show us pictures, but it's not going to help me know it any better what it is. The hayarbuzin, hashotin. So either wild asparagus or aramanth. The hachalag logos, purslane, kuspar shebaharim, coriander from the mountains, the hakarpas shebanaharos, celery from the rivers. I think we had karpas once before, but remember at the Seder we have karpas. The hagargar shel afor, and I guess seeds of the meadow rocket. It's not that the meadow rocket is not a firework. So Mike, you might appreciate it. If you think the meadow rocket is a firework, you might just be a redneck. These are exempt from, you do not have to take tithes from them, because they're not really, because they're ownerless. These things, they grow, the places that they grow, and these things, they grow by themselves and they're ownerless. People don't cultivate them. The nil kachem mikol adam shvius, and you're able to take it from anyone on shvius, because meaning sometimes we're worried that if someone has this vegetable or herb, whatever, it might have been from an improperly watched field that wasn't fully hefker. Hefker again means ownerless, that everyone has right away to go into that field and harvest some of this stuff. But because no one cultivates this stuff for profit, all the stuff is ownerless, and we don't have to worry about that. Because none of these type of things come from guarded fields. Rabbi Huda Omer, mustard seeds that grew by themselves, you're allowed to use it, because even people who don't properly keep Shmitta, they are not suspected of the Bartanur says they're not suspected that they brought it from a guarded field. Rabbi Shimon Omer kol hasvichim l'tarm. Rabbi Shimon says all of these things that grew themselves you're allowed to use them. I think after this there's been a rabbinic enactment that it's not allowed, but these type of svichim things are all mutarim, because we don't suspect that any of them come from guarded fields. Chutz misvichei kruv, except for kruv, which is either cabbage, is the modern Hebrew definition, and how some of the mishnayos that you'll see translated, but Professor Felix translated as kale. She'ein kayot behem b'yarko sada, because those aren't in regular fields. So when that, I guess people find that, they try to, guard it and keep it for themselves. The Chachamim say all these sfichim are forbidden. Base shalosh artos lebir. So the beer again is the time when when the these produce are no longer in the field, you have to take it out of your house. So there's three different times for a particular crop. For any one particular crop, there's three different times that beer happens. Yehuda, Judea, Avra Yarden, the eastern bank of where the Reuven, Gad, and Chatzi Sheva Menashe were, the other side of the Jordan, the Hagalil, and the Galilee up north. And within each of these three regions, there are three sub-regions. So in the Galilee, there's the upper, the lower, and the Amek comes from the word Amok, I guess. So from this place, Kfar Hanania and up, any place that does not have sycamores, that's considered the upper Galilee. And from Kfar Hanania and below, where they don't grow sycamores, those are the lower Galil, which from Tveria Ha'emek. And the boundary around Tveria is considered the Emek. Uvi Yehuda, what are the three areas? Hahar Hashvela V'Emek. The mountain, the lower, and the Emek. Ushvelas Lud Kishvelas Adarom. The low point of Lud is like the southern lower places. The Harshala Kahar Amelach. And its mountain is like the mountain of the king. So the mountain of the king means it's a place called Har HaMelech. That follows whatever the practice is in Har HaMelech. If they have the food in Har HaMelech, they could keep eating it. Base Haron Biyad Hayam, and from Base Haron until the sea, Medina Achas, it's all considered one area with the same law. So let me read the Rambam. It's a very important Rambam here in the Parsha Mishnah. The beer, as I mentioned many times, I said I would explain in this Masechta, so now I'm explaining. The pasuk says that it's for your animals and for the wild animals that are in your land. All the produce will be to eat. The safra, which is a halachic midrash, says just like the wild animal, which is not in your possession, can eat it. That's when the domesticated animal that's in your rishus could eat it, is only allowed to eat it as long as the wild animal could eat it. Then you're allowed to feed it to your animal from your house. So we learn from there that you're not allowed to gather any type of fruit or seed or legume, whatever, and bring it to your house. You're only allowed to eat it as long as it's still on the trees or in the land. When that species is no longer there in the field, you have to remove it from your possession, and this is biur. So, for example, if you had figs, and whether you squeeze them or dried them out, you ate them, you don't have to be strict with them the whole Shmitta, but you could eat them only as long. I think he's saying you shouldn't pile them up. What does this word could mean? A few different things the whole year, but you could only eat them as long as the fresh figs are on the trees. When they are no longer there on the trees anymore, and they're only dried up ones there, then you have to remove all that stuff, all of those the figs from your house, even if they're dry, or you have to eat them all by that time if possible, or you have to burn them or throw them into the sea, and that's biur. So according to the Rambam in the biur, you actually have to destroy them. According to Tosfos, and the Ramban, you have to make them ownerless. You have to bring them outside of your house and declare them ownerless. And this is, we don't pass them like the Rambam I'm pretty sure for what the definition of beer is. Gimel, Lamar Amu Shalosh Artos. So why are there three different lands in Eretz Yisrael? Sheyu Ochel B'Chol Achas V'Achas Atchich La'Achron Shabbat. Because different things stay on the trees in these different sub areas for different amount of times. So you could eat as long as the latest one still has those, either the fruit on the trees or the vegetable in the ground, whatever. Rabbi Shimon Amar Lo Amar Shalosh Artos Al Yehuda. Ushar Kol Artos Kahar HaMelech. Rabbi Shimon said they only have three subcategories of land, sub areas in Yehuda, but the other places, Galil and Ever Yarden, they follow Har HaMelech. And Har HaMelech is a place there was a lot of fruit, I guess, so that was a way of being lenient, to let the people keep eating that produce for longer. But all the lands have the same status in regard to the olives and to dates. So as long as any place in Eretz Yisrael has olives or dates, you could eat in the whole Eretz Yisrael. But we don't pass in Rabbi Shimon. Daled. You're only allowed to eat if it was from ownerless place. But if you had it from, excuse me, that which we said you could eat as long as those produce still exist in the field, that's only in the ownerless, the fields that are being treated as ownerless. But if some people who privately cultivate it still have it growing on their trees or whatever, it doesn't count. You can't eat it in your house just because those have it. Rabbi Yossi Mater Afal Hashamar. Rabbi Yossi says that we do not pass like him, though. If it still exists in the field, in illegally or unlawfully guarded fields, you're still allowed to eat them in your house. Ochlin al hatvicha v'al dufra. You could eat if it's still by the birdhouses or on the dufra, or certain things that have two crops within the same year. Avolo ala sisvanios, but not for the fall crop. Meaning, if it's a fall crop, it's considered a completely different crop. But some things have two waves, I guess, of crops around the same time, so you could wait till the later wave of crops. Rabbi Yehuda Mater Kozman Shabichru Achol Yichla Kais. Rabbi Yehuda allows this as long as they the first ones had ripened, as long as the summer is not over. So, meaning that the fall crop, I guess, if some of the ones of the fall crop had ripened early, if the summer crop is still there, you could still eat the summer crop. You could still eat from the fall crop. So it seems that if the summer crop of whatever species this was extended so much that the fall crop already started to ripen, I guess that extends the time that you're allowed to eat the regular summer crop, and it pushes off the beer for that. But we don't pass the Rabbi. Hey, Hakobe Shlosha Kvashim B'Chavis Achas, Rabbi Lozer Mer Ochel Rishon B'Yishomer Apal Achron. So if you pickled three different types of vegetables, let's say, I'm just saying vegetables as an example, together. So nowadays, I forgot what they call it, but you go by the delis, they have a thing. It has peppers and cauliflower and something else in it, maybe olives. So you have three different things, and you pickle them together. So Rabbi Lezer says so because they give taste to each other because you're pickling them. So you're only allowed to. Rabbi Lezer says you're only allowed to eat it so long as the earliest crop is still in the field. But once one of those three crops is no longer in the field, and so it's the time of beer for that, you have to get rid of your whole thing of the pickle of what you're pickling. Rabbi Yeshua Mer Afal Achron. No, Rabbi Yeshua says as long as one of the species is still out in the field, you're allowed to eat all of them. So the Bartanura says the reason Rabbi Yeshua is since the other two species absorbed the taste from when it was permitted. It has to do with the drasha. So he's basically saying that there's a heter when you're only having the taste of the produce, but not the thing itself. So possibly according to this. So let's say you had, like I said, you had cauliflower and olives, but olives is, let's not say olives because olives are on trees and it's a different thing. But you had peppers and cauliflower and I don't know, green beans, let's say. Or think about a 3-bean salad type thing that you would do. So Jeff, this is an economics professor who did a exchange program with a professor in Russia somewhere. And so he was living in her apartment and he couldn't understand why she had jars of pickles everywhere, of pickled tomatoes everywhere. And everywhere he would turn and every cabinet he would open, there were more, until he realized that because the food situation in the Soviet Union was unreliable, they had a lot of extra tomatoes. So she pickled them for the not so rainy day that was going to happen when there wasn't food. People did things like that, right? Yeah. You knew that there was always going to be a shortage. Right. No, but I don't know if it was just so she would have tomatoes or pickles in case she couldn't get other food. At least she would fall back on this. Right. Right. So the command economy over there. This professor actually thought it was a good thing until he lived there, and then he learned he still thinks it's a good thing, but he's a little bit of a taste of reality. So it could be that according to Rabbi Yeshua, so it could be that let's say that the peppers are the first thing that went to go. So it's possible that you had to eat all the peppers out of your jar of pickled vegetables. So since you ate, since you don't have any more pickled peppers in there, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. So you're allowed to have even though the taste had been transferred, because the peppers and the green beans and the cauliflower gave taste into each other, but since I guess there's no pepper left, there's a special heter. He has a special xeris akasov that you're allowed to eat the other two species. Rabbi Gamliel Omer kol shakala mino mina sodi yivar mino mina chavis. Oh no, so that's what I just said is Rabbi Gamliel's opinion. If that species isn't in the field anymore, you have to eat that from your pickle mix. So if the peppers are the first to go, you have to eat up all the peppers. Yivar mino mina chavis. Halacha kidvar, and the Mishnah itself says we pass them like Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Shimon Omer kol yarek afilu echad lebir. Rabbi Shimon holds that all vegetables, so yarek are vegetables that grow from the ground. So cucumbers, tomatoes, green peppers, all of those things. So they don't grow in the ground. They grow slightly above the ground. But it would exclude fruit, it would exclude grains, and it probably would exclude legumes. Beans probably wouldn't fall under this category either because they grow in the ground. And I have to mention the potatoes, which grow in the ground, they didn't exist in the time of, because that was in the New World, and Columbus, Edinburgh, or whoever, they didn't have it, and they didn't know about it in Eretz Yisrael yet. The beets, I don't know. Ochlin berigila ad shichlu sigarios mibikas based netufa. You could eat purslane, which I forgot. There's a problem here because this Mishnah Regila, some translate as purslane, but some said in Mishnah Aleph, Chalag Logos was also purslane, but these have to be two different species. You could eat purslane until Sigarios, which the regular ones translated as artichokes, from the Bika of Beis Netof. Vav. If you gather moist grasses, you're allowed to use it until the sweetness in it dries up. And so the moisture here means from the earth, that the moisture in the earth which sweetens the fruits. But in Megave Biyavish, if you gather dry things, then there's no deadline. Ad Shetir V'Yashnia, until the second set of rains come, which are usually around the 23rd of Marcheshvan. Because I guess when the second rains come, that's already getting a new injection of the rain into the ground, cuts off the previous stuff from the ground. So you're allowed to use it until there. Leaves of reeds or leaves of grapes until they wither from their parent plants. Meaning, so it's a leaf, it's not a fruit, but some people they do stuffed grape leaves, they put rice in there or whatever. So until I guess other leaves that are still on the vines wither off. But if you took from the dry ones, also you could use those until the second round of rain in the fall. Rabbi Akiva holds for all of these, even the moist ones, you're allowed to use it until the second rainfall. Zion, similarly, if someone rents a house from his friend, and he says until the rains, the generally accepted meaning of that term is until the second set of rains. If someone says, I'm not going to have any benefit from Shmira, meaning he seems to be mad at Shmira, and so he said, I'm not going to derive any benefit from him, and he said, until the rain, until the second set of rains. So obviously these halachas aren't about Shmita, but once we mention the second rains, we're mentioning other halachas that depend on the second rain. How long can poor people enter into orchards during other years, not during Shmita, but in general, they're allowed to go to take the forgotten crops or the corner of the field, and we're not worried that they're going to damage the fields by going through the fields. That's also until the second rains fall. And how long can you have benefit and burn the straw and from Shmita until the second rain falls? So if someone still had, let's say, the cucumbers are no longer there, according to the opinion that cucumbers, that each one has its own time, and now the beer it's up. They're no longer in the field. Based in ounces, they're not in the field anymore. You have to get rid of them. You can keep 3 meals for every member, 3 meals worth of this vegetable or whatever, or for fruit, whatever it is, for every member in your household. But poor people are allowed to eat even after the beer. Although Ashir, not rich people, Rabbi Yehuda. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yossi says everyone is able to eat after the beer. And personally can, but I don't know how the Rambam learns this Mishnah. Here's the Rambam. He says you're asking Rabbi Yossi. I don't understand what the Rambam is because according to the Rambam, you have to destroy it to beer. So I'm not sure, but that's not a problem in the Rambam. I'm sure it's a problem that I don't know about. Tas misha yilo peros, shvius naflo beirusha oshenit lo b'matana. We just want to finish the parak before mincha here. If you received Shmitta produce either as an inheritance or someone gave it to you as a gift, Rabbi Lazar yunasnu la'achleihem. So even though you got them in a permitted way, but Rabbi Lazar says you're not allowed to get them. You can't keep them alone. You have to have with other people, because Rabbi Lazar holds like Beis Shammai that you can't derive benefit from it, or a favor can't be done. So if someone gave it to you, that's like he did you a favor by giving it to you. So that's forbidden to do with Shmitta produce. Therefore, you invite other people. So it's not considered that a favor was done to you. Chachamim says no. Someone who does a sin can't benefit from it, so you have to sell them to the people who eat them. But the money can be split to anyone, meaning it sounds like the money is split, meaning it does not have kedusha shviis on there. The sanctity of the fruit does not apply or extend to the money. So challah, when we separate precious challah, so that's a gift of the Kohen. So if you eat without separating challah, you could get kares, because it's like eating truma type stuff. So even though it's ownerless because it's Shmitta, challah still must be, and normally we say if something is ownerless, you don't have to take off trumas and maestros, but for dough, you still have to separate challah. So this is important halacha, that to tell us that challah still applies in challah. And the reason is, unlike trumas and maestros, which are from a crop, challah is from the dough. So even though the crop itself is ownerless, your dough isn't considered ownerless. So the Kohen still has to get his portion from it. And actually, there's a big difference between challah and all the other trumas and maestros didn't apply until 14 years after they conquered and split up the land, divided the land of Eretz Yisrael. Challah they were immediately obligated to as soon as they crossed the Yarden. So challah is different than regular trumas and maestros.